Hi everyone, welcome back to the main stage. So for our next speaker we have is Mr. Mo Dong, and he is the co-founder at Celer Network, and his topic is going to be about solving liquidity shortage and state availability challenge in off-chain scaling platform. So let's give him a round of applause.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Wow, this light is really, Okay, let me just see if my slides show up. Okay, slides show up. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mo, and I'm from Celer. And Celer is an off-chain scaling platform, but today I'm not going to talk too much about our technology side, but more focusing on the crypto economic side of things. So this is actually a very less researched and discussed topic because we have been known we have known how on-chain crypto economy works through proof of work mining, proof of stake, and all that stuff. But how does an off-chain crypto economic works, and the related security question is the thing that I'm going to talk about today. But before that, I just want to quickly announce that we just launched our testnet and SDK, and you can actually try out the testnet using our user-facing application called C-Wallet. You can download that at get.celer.app. And we also have released SDK, and people have been already building on top of Celer with quite cool applications like gas fee options, off-chain prediction market, and all that stuff. So before I jump into the off-chain, crypto economic aspect, let me just give a quick off-chain scaling 101, right? So I'm going to use the example of the most classic example of payment channel. So what is a payment channel is that if you have Alice and Bob trying to send each other money quickly, really quickly, you can do this. You can have like on-chain bond contract where Alice and Bob both put $10 into it, and then after that they can just quickly send each other money by passing back and forth something called a balance proof. What this balance proof is basically mutually signed agreement saying that among that $20, how much is belonging to Alice and how much is belonging to Bob. And in the end of the session, what's going to happen is that Alice can send this balance proof to this on-chain bond contract, and if basically Alice agrees, the fund will be distributed according to this mutually agreed bond proof. And it is possible that Alice can become malicious and send an older balance proof. And you can see that the sequence number is 47, which means that the balance proof is actually a older balance proof. And the counterparty can dispute that settlement by submitting a more recent balance proof, and the channel will also settle correctly. And also you can do multi-hop payment and even more complex stuff on top of this. But this is just a quick refresher of how state channel works in the simplest form of payment channel. So what Celer Network is a coherent off-chain scaling architecture. We propose a complete layered technology architecture and also a economic construct. For the technology architecture, I'm not going to go through each of the detail here, but just a quick intro that we introduced in the lowest layer. We have this something called C channel that is enabling not only off-chain super fast millisecond level payment, but also enabling off-chain smart contract transactions. And on top of a C channel, we build an extremely high performance, provably optimal routing algorithm that can route your payment instantly and with about 15 to 20 times higher performance than existing solutions. And on top of that, we build something called COS, which is an SDK and effectively a runtime system for the off-chain application to run. And that is kind of like the SDK we release. And if you have an Android phone, download that app, that is basically an instantiation or a reference design for the COS. But today, I'm going to talk more on the off-chain scaling's economic construct part. So off-chain scaling has a lot of promises to increase the speed of transaction, but there are several crucial challenges. For example, there are 3 challenges I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to talk through each of the challenge and the corresponding solution that we are proposing in Celer. So the first challenge I want to talk about is called state availability challenge. Come back to the example of payment channel. Let's say you have two-party and on-chain bond contract. The most recent state proof that is mutually signed is numbered with 49. right? So now in state channel application or state channel platforms, there's a kind of an unrealistic assumption saying that you have to have every party online all the time, but it simply cannot be true. So let's say if someone goes offline, what happens now? Alice can become malicious and try to settle a state proof that is older but more favorable to Alice, and therefore Bob will suffer loss in this case. There has been the very initial work to solve this problem to use the centralized monitoring service, which is a bad solution because the centralized monitoring service has a very strong incentive to collude with the malicious counterparty. And what about the trust-free monitoring service? Some work also is mentioning and trying to solve this using trust-free monitoring services. Well, the trust-free monitoring services look like, at least in the initial form, like this. So there is a third party who is like a watchtower that is helping you to monitor the state. And when you're going offline or doing periodically checkpointing, you just submit your state to this third party. Now, the difference between the centralized or trust-based monitoring service with this is that for this watchtower, it will also deposit like a trust bond or honesty bond to a contract. Now, if the Alice become malicious and try to settle a older state proof, this trust-free service is supposed to submit the most recent state proof for you on your behalf. If it doesn't do that, you can claim the honesty bond it put down on the blockchain later when you come back online because you have the capability to attribute the fault to this watchtower, basically. However, these trust-free monitoring services also have very significant disadvantages. First of all, it doubles the liquidity requirement for state channel network, right? So now it's not only the participant who needs to lock up liquidity in the system, but also the watchtowers or monitoring services also need to lock up liquidity. And in the worst case, it actually doubles the liquidity lockup for this entire system. And it provides a very heterogeneous interface for state guarding because you can have a different kind of asset. You can have the Ethereum, you can have Bitcoin, you can have a different kind of ERC20 token. The corresponding asset that needed to hold in this honest bond contract is very diverse. And sometimes it's not even payment. It's something like an intermediate state of some state transitions, like a game. And it's even harder to figure out what is the actual underlying possible cost if a malicious party try to settle against you. And it is very obscure and expensive pricing model for the services because you need to kind of pairwise negotiate with the service provider what is the service pricing, and also the liquidity lockup makes the service inherently very expensive. And it involves very complex on-chain, off-chain interactions, and finally it provides a very, very rigid insurance model where you get X% back with Y price if the bad things happens, and basically if the watchtower goes away. So to solve all these challenges, we propose the Celer's State Guardian Network. So what State Guardian Network is doing here is a special kind of sidechain. And you stake Celer token into this sidechain and become a state guardian. Now, when you're going offline or as an IoT device trying to periodically checkpointing the states, you will just submit your state to the sidechain along with the payment. It's basically, let's say Bob is paying the state guardian network $5 for 5 hours, and that is $1 per hour income. And the first question to answer is how many state guardians will be guarding the state for Bob, right? So that is decided very efficiently based on Bob's income flow injection to this network versus the entire network's income flow. Let's say this entire network is receiving income of $2 per hour and Bob is paying $1 per hour. Then roughly randomly selected half of the state guardians will be guarding the state for Bob. And of course, each of the state guardian here is not like a uniformed. Some state guardian may have more Celer token, and therefore they're more likely to be selected in this guarding process and therefore receive more fees, statistically speaking. And what this is really enabling is that it can provide a very uniform interface for state guardian, that the state guardian no longer cares what is the underlying state that is at stake. Right, so it can be a game state, it can be a payment state, it can be all sorts of state, as long as like you're paying the state guardian corresponding fee, the corresponding number of the state guardian will be guarding the state for you. Now, in operation, what this looks like is that, let's say Alice becomes malicious and try to settle a state on the state channel contract. Then, after the challenge period starts, each of the guarded state guardian will be randomly assigned with a dispute slot. And this is designed to enable collusion resistance among all these randomly selected state guardians. So let's say the first state guardian who is supposed to report in the first slot didn't do it, and the second state guardian does that. What's going to happen is that the first guardian will be kicked out of the state guardian network, and also the Celer token stake will be slashed, and his fee and Celer token will all be given back to the second state guardian who is like doing honest job. So with this construct, as long as there is one state guardian in this entire randomly selected set that is not malicious, the user state is safe. What if all state guardians are actually malicious? What if the worst come to worst? Then what's going to happen is that when the user later comes online, it can submit still an attribution of malicious behavior, because after all this is a sidechain, so the user can submit and prove to the main chain that he has already submitted the state to the sidechain early on. And all the state guardians who are malicious will be kicked out of the state guardian network, and user will be compensated back with the Celer token stake. So with this construct, what this really enables is a very flexible insurance model. Right, so now it's user's choice to pay a certain amount of money for the guardian services, so that basically a certain amount of the Celer token is guarding it for him. And what is Celer token in a state guardian network is representing an income flow, basically. So now the user is not saying that, okay, I'm paying you X to get Y% back. Instead, the user is saying that, okay, I'm paying this level of fee, and in the worst case, I can get Celer token back, and ignoring all the frictions, I can stake Celer token and become state guardian and recover my loss. So here, it creates this new market dynamic that is, the user is ensuring with the property of how fast he recovers the loss, the potential loss. So this is like a kind of a quick overview of state guardian networks usage in solving the state availability problem. Now the next challenge in off-chain economic design or off-chain economic security design is called connectivity challenge. So let's say Alice and Bob is playing a chess in a state channel, and there is some payment that is conditionally depends on the result of the state. Alice is trying to make a winning move in the state channel, in the state channel application, and Bob is just rage quitting because like this is a winning move. If Bob signs the same state, he will be losing the game and therefore the state. So Bob is like just basically rage quitting. So now can we just in this case punish Bob in some way? Well, the problem is that we cannot, because there's no way for Alice or Bob to prove to the blockchain that, or to let the blockchain differentiate among these three scenarios. The first scenario is, Bob rage quitting. The second scenario is Alice is trying to be malicious and without sending the state proof to Bob and directly goes to the blockchain and try to settle the state. And the third scenario is that it is actually no one's fault. It's just that the network is somehow disconnected between Bob and Alice, even though they have some connectivity in other places. So to solve this connectivity challenge, we need a fallback data exchange fabric that is reasonably available to all participants in the state channel applications. And it has the attribution capability of availability time that is saying that, okay, I have actually put this state into this data exchange fabric. It's just you haven't received it yet. And third, it needs to be cost effective. And fourth, it doesn't require a large amount of resources from the end users. So we can use the underlying blockchain as a data availability service So how to do that is that you can just submit your state proof into it. It's definitely reasonably available. It's like reasonably available for everyone. It has a very reliable attribution of availability. But the problem is that it incurs permanent on-chain storage. Therefore, it is very expensive. And it actually requires end user to have ON monitoring capability to keep monitoring the states to see who has like disputed against him. So we actually, write on SGN for a second time using SGN as a data availability service. So it is reasonably available that because it is sidechain, we can like reasonably agree that everyone has access to this SDN, State Guardian Network. It has attribution of availability time because there is a constant block rule that gets committed to the main chain. It is very cheap off-chain storage, and the storage construct can be very flexible. That we can actually construct a continuous state pruning sidechain because not all the state is actually going to be there permanently. And it requires all log-in monitoring. This is also something that we did very recently in research. That is kind of reusing the plasma cache construct. That is for every off-chain smart contract, we have a kind of a leaf node in the sparse Merkle tree, and you can have the capability to only store all log-in state for each of the user monitoring its own corresponding states. So how it works is that basically, whenever which party goes offline, Alice will just submit the state proof to the State Guardian Network and wait for the timeout. In the case that Alice is actually malicious and trying to settle a state, against Bob, Bob will actually respond to the state challenge in the State Guardian Network as well under the same Merkle tree leaf. And if it is really the case that like Bob is rage quitting here, after submitting it to the sidechain and waited for the timeout, Alice here will actually trigger a 1-bit claim challenge with a money bond on the main chain. Basically, without actually deploying all the complex logic of the, for example, a chess game on the blockchain, basically saying that I win the chess. And like a very, very tiny state will be put on chain, and also with a bond to challenge. Now, because of this State Guardian Network existence, even if Bob here is responding to the challenge with also money bond, what's going to happen is that Alice can therefore get the state availability attestation from the sidechain to the main chain, and therefore the challenge will judge Bob to be losing the challenge. So basically, using this sidechain as a data connectivity fallback layer, we can actually have a relatively reliable attribution mechanism for this data connectivity challenge in off-chain scaling platform. So just to summarize that, we just talked about the State Guardian Network, which is a compact sidechain. It has decentralized trust. We have the collusion-resistant mechanism built in, so that only if all these selected State Guardian are actually malicious, the user's stake will be at risk. And it provides a very simple and unified interface. There's no additional liquidity lockup in this entire process because people are locking up the Celer token instead of the actual liquidity. And Celer token is denominated as kind of like an income flow or future income flow for this State Guardian to do work. So the Celer token here is working like a work authorization token. And it's enables a very flexible economic dynamic and very efficient service pricing. And because it's just a one-direction price deciding factor that is okay. I'm submitting my state to this State Guardian Network, and I can choose whatever price I want to the level that enough State Guardian will be covering for my state. And it can also be used as a data connectivity fabric to solve the data connectivity challenge. So, another thing we want to talk about is called network liquidity problem. So in this state channel applications, to establish state channel, you need to have like an on-chain bond deposit, right? So it is fine for end users to do that because for end user, as long as it is opening a state channel, the money is his, he will just like deposit the bond into the state channel. Now, it is actually pretty hard for a off-chain service provider, which is like the blue dot here, to source all these capitals to open a lot of channels with a lot of end users. So this problem is quite challenging because for many people who has the capability to run a reliable off-chain service infrastructure, they may not have enough liquidity to do so. For people who have enough liquidity, they may not have the business interest or the technical capability to run that service. And that mismatch is actually causing a very slow adoption to this entire architecture. And finally, what this is going to result into is basically we create a huge centralization risk, where pool service is going to result, a very expensive service is going to happen as a result. There's no neutrality and a strong possibility of censorship, and there's like a very closed system for the evolution. So we need to solve that problem. Okay, so we need liquidity, but liquidity has to come from somewhere, right? So how about we figure out a way to incentivize people to lock up liquidity into the system for a long period of time? To enable that capability or to enable that possibility, we introduced something called a Proof of Liquidity Commitment mining. And for Proof of Liquidity Commitment mining is kind of like a virtual mining process, where you say that, okay, I'm willing to lock up 10 ETH for 3 years for nothing but, for this process of backing Celer Network as a potential liquidity thing. And someone is locking up like some other amount of ETH for a certain amount of years. And there will be newly generated Celer token will be distributed proportionally to the virtual mining power. Now, what is the virtual mining power is basically a product of the amount of liquidity and also the time commitment. So, basically, if you have a long time of commitment and also a large amount of liquidity committed to the Celer network, you will have a larger mining power and therefore getting more and more newly generated Celer token. And now we have a stable and abundant liquidity pool locked in for Celer. Let's try to use them, right? So let's try to use them. So to use them, we introduce some mechanism called liquidity backing auction. So what liquidity backing auction really is a mechanism for the off-chain service provider to crowdsource liquidity. Right? So for example, an off-chain service provider may say, okay, I need 100 ETH for 30 days with maximal acceptable interest rate of 1%, and people can just bid on this contract. Right? So someone will say, okay, I'm willing to lend you 100 ETH for 0.5% of interest rate, and I have 10 Celer token, I'm willing to log into this process. Someone is saying, okay, I'm willing to lend you this for 1% of the interest rate, and someone else may say, okay, I'm willing to lend you 0.5, which is the same as the first guy, but has more Celer token. He's willing to stake or locked into this auction process. Now what's going to happen is that we'll rank it by the interest rate, of course, first, because we need to be incentive compatible for this off-chain service provider who want to select the lowest interest rate. But we also want to have a way in this liquidity backing auction process to reward the people who have contributed to the liquidity in the first place. So we were actually introducing something called the second score auction that is taking into account not only the interest rate asked, but also the amount of Celer token one is agreed into staking in this process. In the beginning of the Celer evolution, this process will be staking. When all the Celer token is mined during the mining process, this will actually burn Celer token. And this is the second score auction, so that the winner of the auction only need to adjust the score to match the loser of the auction. And we have a very detailed game theoretical analysis of the auction process to make sure that it is truthful in the game theoretical sense. So with this, what we basically enabled is the proof of liquidity committed mining, which is enabling people who have free liquidity to mine Celer by locking up idle liquidity in this off-chain platform, and therefore incentivize and lock up and create a very abundant and stable liquidity pool. And at the same time, we use the liquidity backing auction process to enable off-chain service provider to crowdsource liquidity. And at the same time, we treat the Celer token here as a role of kind of an airline frequent flyer mileage that like because they get that because they in the past have been contributing to a stable and abundant liquidity pool, and in this liquidity backing auction process, they are also rewarded because they get a slight higher priority when bidding in these liquidity backing contract. And I didn't mention the security implication for this, but from a high level, it ensures 100% safety for end users, because even if the off-chain service provider is hacked, the end user who received the token relayed to them from this off-chain service provider can always ensure that these tokens are 100% backed by this liquidity backing auction process. So yeah, so that is, if you think about it systematically, the proof of liquidity commitment mining and liquidity backing auction here is to lower the barrier to bring on-chain state changes to off-chain state by enabling a more liquid and easier to operate network. And the state guardian network here, which solves the data connectivity and also the state availability problem, is a layer that is trying to enable the capability to safely bring back the states from off-chain to on-chain if necessary. So the entire Celer's C economic construct complete this entire off-chain ecosystem by enabling this full circle. So just as a closing remark, that we have released the first gateway to Celer Network SDK, and in this wallet you can actually use instant payment, which today can already be 1,000 now 2,000 times faster than on-chain transactions with zero gas fees, and also you can use this for some very fun off-chain smart contract games. Which is the first ever support that we support. So, okay, so that's just a quick introduction of how we are thinking about off-chain economics, crypto economics, and also especially the security side of things.